Yeah, but first would be the hand portion. So you would want to unscrew the sides so you're able to fit your fingers in the clearance portion up front.
So I might repeat some of these steps just for clarity's sake. These are our screws right here that James is referring to on each side. And what this allows us to do, this actually allows us to make this hole right here a little bit larger, right? So this is how we actually accommodate it for multiple people's size arms, because James and I are different heights probably, and there's a variety of people who would use the hand mentor, and we have to be able to accommodate different anatomy. And so what we can do is we can actually modify this, but for the purposes of donning, i.e. putting the hand mentor on, it can be helpful to make this hole large to start with. Okay, and then what we can do is, next step is take off that pad. So this is, I often will call this kind of a clamshell because it can kind of open up like this, very much like a clamshell. And you can see when we open up that clamshell, and we're actually, I'm gonna draw attention to this, we're actually gonna leave these two front Velcro pads attached, Velcro straps rather attached. And that's gonna be really important in just a second, and I'll explain why. And then that will actually reveal this silicone pad right here. This is where our fingers go. This, we call this the finger pad. And there are a number of versions of this, especially important if you have a lot of flexion tone and you're not able to actually fully extend your fingers. But for the purposes of most people, I'd say 85, 90% of people, they can actually accommodate this interface, okay? And typically the way that I'll instruct people to do this is, let's say I have a left-sided stroke and my right side is impaired, so contralateral side. What I would instruct someone to do is take it in their less involved hand by this chromoly piece right here. We call this the T-bar. You can grab onto this, very secure, and just to get a good grasp over it. Then what I ask you to do is put your hand through that hole that we just created by moving the hand mentor down in in those slots. Once you have that, you can kind of let the hand mentor relax a little bit. It doesn't matter if it slides over, that's totally fine for right now. We'll accommodate that and adjust that later. But what we're gonna do next is really, and this is what James was talking about, we wanna get our hand on this pad right here. And so if you do have some flexion tone, no problem. Take the time and actually go ahead and get those fingers. And if you need to manually do this, you can extend them out just like this. And I'll encourage you guys, if you have comments about any or questions about any aspect of this, please do put them in the actual chat and I'll be sure to answer them while we go along, okay? So just take the moment and actually get those fingers extended like this, okay? And once you get them extended, it's okay to hold your hand down with your other hand. And we want to actually have our foam pad coming close up, right, just like that. That's where the clamshell action comes in, right, kind of a clamshell. And so this is why it's really important to leave those front pads, front Velcro straps on right here, because otherwise we'd have, this guy would be loose and we have to kind of keep this down and attach those two pads, those two straps rather, I keep calling them pads, those two straps. Once you have the clamshell on the top of your fingers, what we want to do then is take these two pads, or these two straps, and attach them to the top of our actual foam pad right here. If you can see, it's actually Velcro across the top. And what we can do then is take both of them and cinch them up, okay? Now, if you don't get this right the first time, don't worry, we can always adjust this, no problems. And often that if you don't get it right the first time, what will happen is kind of a good cue is that your fingers might slide out of the hand mentor itself. You might experience this type of action right here. That's totally fine. What I would do in that situation is I really recommend you undo these pads just gently, not fully, but just a little bit. And that's what kind of loosen up the actual top pad here and slide your hand in more. Ideally, we'd have your fingers coming out the tops a little bit here, and you should not be able to see your fingers in the bottom. So if you can see your fingers like this, we're too far out. We need to have them pretty far up top like this, okay? Good coverage of those fingers, and you should barely be able to see your knuckles on the top, okay? Once we have that done, fundamentally the hardest bit's done and dusted, okay? Then all we have to do is make sure our wrist is aligned. And this is an important aspect too, but it shouldn't be that difficult. So one thing I want to draw your attention to, this is kind of my axis of rotation of my wrist right here. You can see as I bend down and extend, so a flexion extension here, you can see that we're bending about this joint segment. What we want to do is we want to actually line that up with this joint right here. You can see this joint as it comes down to our second joint here on the hand mentor. Imagine a line drawing straight through that, and you want to line up those two line segments, and that will get us alignment, joint alignment. The reason this is important is if we don't have this, our joints and the hand mentor will not be accommodated perfectly, meaning the sort of rotation axes are a little bit off, and it might move us a little bit in the hand mentor. Not going to hurt anything, it just means that the functionality might be subpar. We don't want to have that. So all we have to do then is, since our hand pad is still loose, all we have to do is slide the hand pad here with respect to the actual forearm part until those lines intersect, okay? So before we were here, and you can see that line right here, and we wanted to bring it to here. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna hold on with the top part here, the less involved limb, and pull our hand towards, in these slots, these black screws, back towards the forearm pad. Once we have that good alignment, all we're gonna do is tighten up those screws on either side. And now the hand mentor is sized for you, meaning it's appropriately fit. The axis of rotation are appropriate. Now the last thing we have to do is just tighten up our, actually did this here, is tighten up our forearm pads, and we'll be good to go. That's these guys right here. Just like that, okay? And again, they should be fairly snug, but they shouldn't be restrictive. Good rule of thumb is you should be able to get maybe a finger or two inside of that pad. If you can't get a finger or two in there, probably tight, loosen up a little bit. Then I always like to do a quick check just to make sure things are moving smoothly. If you find that there's a little bit of restriction, or feels a little bit tight in one way, maybe check the axis of rotation and make sure that you're aligned up well.